Let's turn now to those comments from Penny Wong, who in her podcast debut has suggested an Indigenous voice to Parliament was inevitable, or is inevitable. Never mind the fact that, of course, Australians voted against it 60-40. Wong says Australians will one day be incredulous there was ever an argument over the voice. Now, the guys at Advance Australia, they were quick off the mark today, and they could not have put it better.
Remember the Voice to Parliament referendum?
Australia has made the choice and voted no.
Well, Anthony Albanese and Penny Wong want to ignore your vote, saying that the voice is inevitable.
Look, I think we'll look back on it in 10 years' time and it'll be a bit like marriage equality, don't you reckon? Like I always used to say, marriage equality, which took us such a bloody fight to get that done. And I thought, all this fuss, it'll become something. It'll be like, people go, do we have an argument about that? They won't even like it. The kids today, or even adults today, barely kind of clock that it used to be an issue.
Authorised by Sandra Burke, Advance Australia, Canberra.
And more and more and more are going to hit social media networks in the coming hours. Peter Dutton too, he hit back. Have a listen.
I thought the Prime Minister had heard that we said no, and now it turns out Labor's thinking about legislating it.
Look at the whole debate this week about Welcome to Country. That news.com poll, 130,000+ Australians, 67% said no. No, we want all these welcome to countries to stop. You saw how people voted in the Voice referendum. It could not be clearer. The vast majority of Australians do not want this country divided by race. But Labor isn't listening. And as I've reported repeatedly in the past, Truth and Treaty are both still funded in the federal budget. The work is continuing. Joining me now from Launceston, former Prime Minister Tony Abbott. Well, Tony Abbott, I would regard this as a denial of democracy, wouldn't you?
Absolutely right, Peter. This is a giant two-fingered salute to the voters of Australia who resoundingly said no to a voice. And what Penny Wong has admitted today is you're going to get the voice anyway if we stay in government. Now, the only language that people like Penny Wong and Anthony Albanese will understand is being booted out. Because if they stay, the voice is coming, regardless of how we voted, whether we like it or not, because that's exactly what Green left governments do. They deny the will of the public and try to avoid it at every turn.
You and I both have discussed this. We've never thought that Labor's dropped the voice. I mean, Labor don't drop any of these sort of causes. It's a bit like an iceberg. You only see a little tip every once in a while, but it's, you know, there. And as I mentioned, all the underlying work's being still done in the public service. How, though, given the election and the majority of people will still be voting on Saturday, how on earth do you get this message out so the Australians who voted no understand if they vote for Labor or the Greens on the weekend, they get something that they opposed back regardless of the referendum?
Well, yes, Peter. It was only ever a tactical retreat by the Prime Minister and by the Green left. And what people need to understand between now and polling day is that if you never want to see this divisive, race-based voice, you've just got to get rid of the government that's authored it, because they haven't given up. And if we want them to understand that no means no, we've got to get rid of the Albanese government that brought all this on.
Talk to me about energy, because it's been front and centre of the campaign. If Labor's returned, though, under Chris Bowen, we're going to look like Spain. They've been left in the dark in recent days, and that's in relation to a renewables power breakdown. We've even got the former UK Labor PM, Tony Blair, saying that net zero is a big problem. He says rapidly phasing out fossil fuels or limiting energy consumption is doomed to fail. How is it that the rest of the world's waking up and yet here we've still got our head in the sand?
Look, the biggest single disaster masterminded and brought on by the current government is the energy train wreck. And it's just getting worse and worse all the time. And Spain, which has had a national 24-hour blackout, shows what's just around the corner if we keep going down this path. Tony Blair has had the decency and the common sense to call this out, but the two people who will never listen are Anthony Albanese and Chris Bowen. This is worse than economic self-harm. It's almost attempted economic suicide, Peter. Now, I've been in probably a dozen or more marginal seats over the last few weeks, and the message that I'm getting from the general public, it's not just about cost of living. It's about the economic vandalism behind the cost of living crisis, and there's no better illustration than energy policy. People understand, as Dick Smith said today, it is a simple delusion to think that you can run a country on solar panels and batteries. You can run a house, but you can't run a country. And if we keep going down this path, it won't just be our cost of living that goes through the roof. We'll lose our jobs, we'll lose our industries, we'll lose our security, our national security, not just our financial security, because energy security is national security. This is the scale of the unfolding disaster if we don't change the government on Saturday.
Yeah, I just showed very quickly there an open letter that went into the newspapers today, 50 experts. So people not pushing a particular barrow, these are experts in energy who have called out the issue of our renewables only grid. You're in Tassie, and I know Tassie's had, some good and some tough and some challenging economic times over the years, and you've got a lot of lovely young people behind you who want to be able to stay in Tasmania, I suspect, who want to run a business or join an industry and stay on the Apple Isle. And if we send our industry offshore, if we end up becoming a country of nail bars and baristas, for God's sake, if we don't make things in this country anymore, then there's no opportunity for these young people.
Completely correct, Peter. Obviously, Tasmania is a wonderful place, but you can't have a great community without a strong economy to sustain it. And as Peter Dutton has said, electricity is the economy. Power is the economy. And if we go back to the Middle Ages, relying on the sun and the wind to provide our power, eventually we're going to have a commensurate lifestyle and a commensurate living standard. And that's the folly of all this. I mean, China's not doing it, India's not doing it, Russia's not doing it, now the United States is not doing it, and yet we are still embarked on this road to economic nowhere.
I'll leave you there. I know you're in marginal seats and you're working right until the wire. Someone would think you're still in office, Tony Abbott, but I know you love a campaign. Thank you for your time.
I'm a recovering politician, Peter. I'm a recovering politician, and this is a relapse.